"I still remember what happened last night," said the Apache woman to the rancher who saved her. The night came quietly over the wide land, stretching long shadows across the open fields and low hills. The ranch stood alone, far from any town, surrounded by fences, dry grass, and a sky full of restless stars. The rancher had lived there for many years, long enough to learn the sounds of the night. He could tell the difference between the wind moving through the grass and an animal stepping too close to the house. That night, something felt different. He had just finished closing the barn doors when he heard it. A sound so soft that at first he thought it was his imagination. It was not the cry of an animal, and it was not the wind. It was a human sound, weak and uneven, like someone struggling to breathe. He froze where he stood, listening again. The sound came once more, closer this time, carried by the night air. The rancher picked up his lantern and moved slowly toward the edge of his land. He had learned long ago not to rush into things. The land could be dangerous at night, and fear often made people careless. As he walked, the sound grew clearer. It came from near the fence line where the land dipped slightly before rising again. There, lying on the cold ground, was a woman. She was barely moving. Her clothes were torn and covered in dust, and her long dark hair was tangled and loose around her face. Her breathing was shallow, and her hands trembled as if she were trying to hold onto the earth itself. The rancher stopped a few steps away, unsure of what he was seeing. He had heard stories all his life, stories of conflict, mistrust, and danger, but what he saw now was not a threat. It was a person in need. She was Apache. He knew this by her features, her clothing, and the small symbols woven into the fabric she wore. For a moment, he hesitated. Helping her could bring trouble. Others might come looking for her. People might ask questions he could not easily answer. But as he watched her struggle for breath, those thoughts faded. He knelt beside her and spoke softly, his voice steady and calm. He did not know if she could understand him, but he hoped the sound of a human voice would help. Her eyes opened slightly, dark and filled with fear. She tried to move away, but her body did not obey her. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You're safe now." He did not touch her at first. He waited, letting her see that he meant no harm. After a moment, her eyes closed again, and her head fell back against the ground. The rancher knew he did not have much time. The night air was cold, and she was clearly exhausted. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, as if hunger and long travel had taken their toll. He carried her back toward the house, step by careful step, the lantern casting a small circle of light around them. With every movement, he was aware of how fragile she felt. Inside the house, he laid her on his bed and covered her with a clean blanket. He brought water and placed it nearby, along with a small lamp to keep the room warm and bright. He worked quietly, respecting her space even as he helped her. When he cleaned the dirt from her hands and face, he noticed scars, old ones, healed but never forgotten. They told stories of a hard life, one shaped by loss and endurance. She stirred slightly, her lips moving as if she were trying to speak. No sound came out. The rancher stepped back and waited, sitting in a chair near the door. He did not sleep. He watched the rise and fall of her chest, listening to the sounds of the night outside. Hours passed slowly. The sky began to lighten, the deep black turning into soft gray. Birds called from the trees, welcoming the morning. The woman finally opened her eyes fully. She looked around the room, alert now, her body tense as she tried to understand where she was. When she saw the rancher, she pulled the blanket closer, her gaze sharp and cautious. He raised his hand slightly, showing he carried nothing and meant no harm. He spoke gently, choosing his words with care. "You were hurt," he said. "I found you near my fence. I brought you here so you wouldn't freeze." She watched him closely, measuring his tone, his posture, the space he kept between them. Slowly, she relaxed just enough to sit up. Pain crossed her face, but she did not cry out. She was proud, he could tell, and strong in a quiet way. She asked where she was. Her voice was soft but clear. He told her the truth. He told her the name of the place, how far it was from the nearest town, and that no one else lived nearby. He did not ask questions. He waited for her to speak when she was ready. She told him her name after a long silence. She did not share much else. The rancher nodded and accepted what she offered, understanding that trust was not something given easily. He brought her food, simple bread and warm broth. She ate slowly, as if her body was not used to such kindness. As the sun rose higher, light filled the room. Dust danced in the air, and the smell of earth drifted in through an open window. Outside, the ranch went on as it always had, unaware that two lives had crossed paths in a way neither had planned. The woman rested, her eyes closing again as exhaustion returned. The rancher stepped outside, leaning against the doorframe as he looked across the land. He knew this was only the beginning. Whatever had happened the night before had followed her here, and the past rarely stayed quiet for long. But for now, the night was over. She was alive, and in that simple truth, everything had already changed. Morning settled slowly over the ranch, spreading light across the fields and turning the cool air warm. The woman slept longer this time, her breathing deeper and steadier. The rancher moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake her. He brewed coffee, fed the animals, and checked the fences, all while his thoughts returned again and again to the stranger resting inside his home. When he came back in, she was awake. She sat upright on the bed, the blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes followed every movement he made. There was no panic in her face now, but there was caution. She watched him the way someone watches an unfamiliar path, ready to step back if it turns dangerous. He paused near the doorway and spoke softly. "How are you feeling?" She considered the question. Her body still ached and her head felt heavy, but the sharp edge of fear had dulled. "I am alive," she said after a moment. "That is something." He nodded, accepting her words without trying to soften them. He set a cup of warm water on the table and stepped back again, giving her room to decide what to do next. She noticed that. It mattered to her more than she let show. She asked him his name. He told her. Then he asked if she was in pain. She hesitated, then answered honestly. "Some," she said, "but I have known worse." He did not press further. Instead, he offered food again, this time eggs and bread. She ate slowly, tasting each bite as if it were new. The simple meal seemed to calm her. Her shoulders loosened just a little. After she finished, she stood carefully, testing her strength. He stayed close but did not touch her unless she asked. When she swayed, he moved a chair toward her without a word. She sat, grateful but still proud. She walked to the window and looked out at the land. The wide open space surprised her. It was quiet, almost peaceful, no shouting, no sudden movement, just wind and grass and the distant sound of animals. "You live alone," she said. "Yes," he answered. "Most days," she nodded. "That can be a good thing." They fell into silence. It was not an uncomfortable one. It felt like a pause, a space where both were listening rather than speaking. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Inside, trust began to form in small, careful steps. Later, she asked for water to wash. He showed her where the basin was and stepped outside while she cleaned herself. When he returned, she looked more like herself, still tired but steadier, more present. She tied her hair back and stood straighter. She asked how he had found her. He told her about the sound near the fence, about the lantern light, about the choice he made in that moment. He spoke plainly, without drama. She listened closely, her face unreadable. "You could have turned away," she said. "Yes," he replied, "I could have. But you did not." "No," she studied him for a long time. "That choice matters," she said quietly. As the day went on, she rested again, sitting near the window while he worked nearby. He mended a chair, cleaned tools, and cooked another simple meal. They spoke little, but when they did, the words were careful and honest. She asked if anyone had come looking for her. He said no. The land was quiet. No riders, no strangers. That seemed to ease something inside her, though worry still lingered in her eyes. In the afternoon, she told him she was not ready to leave. Her body needed more time. He agreed without hesitation. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. "No one will force you." That night, they ate together at the table. The lamp cast a warm glow, softening the edges of the room. Shadows danced on the walls. She noticed the small details, the worn wood, the simple tools, the lack of anything unnecessary. This was a life built on work and patience. After the meal, she sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "I did not expect kindness," she said at last. He looked at her, surprised by the openness in her voice. "Why not?" "Because the world has taught me not to," she answered. He did not argue. He knew the truth of that lesson. When night came again, fear returned in subtle ways. She startled at small sounds. Her sleep was light, broken by memories she did not share. The rancher stayed awake longer than usual, listening, ready to help if needed. Near midnight, she spoke from the darkness. "You are not like the others," she said. "I am just a man," he replied. She turned toward his voice. "That is not just anything." The second day passed much like the first, but with small changes. She moved more freely. She asked more questions. She smiled once briefly when he told a simple story about a stubborn horse. It surprised them both. By evening, the space between them felt smaller, not gone but narrowed by shared hours and quiet respect. Whatever had happened before she arrived still waited in the shadows, but for now, she was safe. And both of them knew that the hardest part was not the night she had survived, but the truths that would soon need to be spoken. The third morning arrived with a heavy stillness, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The sky was pale, covered by thin clouds that softened the light. Inside the house, the woman sat near the window, watching the slow movement of the grass. She had slept little. Her eyes showed it, darkened by thoughts that would not rest. The rancher noticed the change as soon as he entered the room. She was quieter than before, her hands tightly folded, her shoulders tense. He did not ask questions right away. He had learned that some things needed time, and some truths could only be spoken when the heart was ready. He poured water and set a cup near her. She thanked him but did not drink. Instead, she stared at the surface of the water as if it held answers she was afraid to touch. After a long silence, she spoke. "I still remember what happened last night," she said. Her voice was calm, but the words carried weight. They were not about the night she had slept in the house. They were about the night before that. The one that had brought her to his land, broken and running. The rancher sat down across from her. He did not interrupt. He did not rush her. He simply waited. She took a slow breath. "I remember everything," she continued. "I did not lose myself the way some people do. My mind stayed awake even when my body was weak." She looked up at him then, her eyes steady. "I remember the fear. I remember the running. I remember thinking I would not see the sun again." He nodded once, showing he was listening. "I remember falling," she said. "And I remember hearing your footsteps. At first I thought you were someone else. I was ready to fight or disappear into the dark, but then I heard your voice." She paused, swallowing hard. It did not sound like anger. The room was very quiet. Even the sounds outside seemed distant. "I remember you lifting me," she went on. "I remember feeling cold, then warmth. I remember thinking that if this was the end, at least it was not alone." Her hands trembled slightly now. She pressed them together to steady herself. The rancher felt the words settle deep inside him. He had not saved her expecting thanks or meaning. He had acted because it felt right. But hearing how close she had been to giving up changed something in him. "I wanted you to know," she said softly, "that I remember. You did not carry a stranger, you carried someone who knew." He took a breath. "I'm glad you're here," he said. It was simple, but it was true. She looked away, back toward the window. "Being here has given me space to think," she said, "and thinking can be dangerous." "How so?" he asked. "Because memory returns," she replied, "and memory asks questions." She stood slowly and began to walk across the room. Her steps were careful but steady. "I have spent my life learning to move forward," she said, "not backward. But the night you found me pulled the past into the present." He watched her, saying nothing. "I was running not just from danger," she said. "I was running from a choice I did not want to face." She stopped near the door and rested her hand against the wall. "If I had not crossed your land, I do not know where I would be now." "You crossed it for a reason," he said. She turned back to him. "Do you believe that?" "Yes," he answered. "I do." She studied him again as she had done before, but this time her gaze was different. Less guarded, more searching. "You listen," she said. "Most people wait for their turn to speak." "I've had a lot of time to learn," he replied. She returned to her seat and sat down slowly. The tension in her shoulders eased just a little. "I did not want to speak of that night," she said, "but keeping it inside was becoming heavier than the truth." "I'm honored you shared it," he said. She nodded. "Sharing does not make it easier," she admitted, "but it makes it real, and real things can be faced." The rest of the day passed quietly, but something had shifted. The air between them felt clearer, as if a door had been opened and light allowed in. They worked side by side in small ways. She helped peel vegetables. He showed her how to fix a loose hinge. Simple tasks, but shared ones. At one point she laughed softly at herself when she dropped a piece of bread. The sound surprised her. It had been a long time since laughter came so easily. As evening approached, clouds gathered again, darker now. The wind picked up, brushing against the house. She stood at the window, watching the sky change. "Storms come quickly here," she said. "They do," he replied, "but they pass." She considered that. "Some storms live inside people," she said. "They don't leave so easily." "No," he agreed, "but even those can quiet down." That night they sat near the fire. The light flickered, casting moving shadows across the walls. She spoke again, this time about her people, her childhood, the lessons she had been taught. She did not speak of pain in detail. She spoke of strength, of endurance, of carrying forward what could not be left behind. He shared pieces of his own story too. Not all of it, but enough to show he was not untouched by loss. He spoke of mistakes, of choosing solitude, of learning how to live with silence. The fire burned low as the hours passed. Before she went to rest, she paused at the doorway. "Thank you for listening," she said. "Thank you for trusting me," he answered. She slept more deeply that night, not without dreams but without fear pulling her awake. The rancher sat outside for a while, watching the stars appear one by one. He understood now that saving her had not ended that night. It had begun something far more complicated. The past had found its voice, and once spoken, it would not be easily ignored. The fourth day began with clear skies and a gentle breeze. Sunlight filled the house early, touching the walls and floor in warm lines. The woman woke before the rancher this time. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the quiet sounds of the place she had begun to know. The house no longer felt strange. It felt careful, steady, like the man who lived in it. She stood and stretched slowly, feeling the strength returning to her body. The pain was still there, but it no longer ruled her movements. She washed her face, tied her hair, and stepped outside. The land looked different in the morning. The wide fields felt open instead of empty. The sky felt close instead of distant. She breathed deeply, letting the air fill her lungs. For the first time since arriving, she felt fully awake. The rancher came out a short while later, surprised to find her already up. "You should rest more," he said, though his voice carried no command. "I have rested," she replied. "Now I want to live again." He nodded, respecting her choice. They shared a simple breakfast outside. The animals moved calmly nearby, used to the rhythm of the rancher's days. She watched him work as he always did, quiet, focused, patient. There was no rush in him, no wasted motion. "Can I help?" she asked. He hesitated, then handed her a small task. It was nothing heavy, nothing dangerous, just something to do together. As they worked, they talked more than before. Not about the night or the fear, but about smaller things. She asked how long he had lived there. He told her about the seasons, how the land changed, how loneliness sometimes felt like peace and sometimes felt like weight. She told him about her people, about the way stories were passed down, about how listening was as important as speaking. She spoke of elders, of learning through watching, of strength that did not need to be loud. At one point she stopped and looked at him. "You carry your past quietly," she said. "So do you," he replied. She smiled at that. It was not a wide smile, but it was real. Later they walked the fence line together. The land stretched far in every direction. She stopped near the place where he had found her days earlier. The ground looked ordinary now, like nothing important had ever happened there. "It's strange," she said. "How places remember even when they look the same." "I think people remember for them," he said. She nodded. "Yes, that feels right." As the sun climbed higher, she grew tired. He noticed and guided her back to the house without comment. She rested while he prepared food. When she woke again, she found him sitting at the table, repairing something small with careful hands. "You are patient," she said. "Only because I've learned what happens when I'm not," he answered. That opened another door. He spoke more freely then. About choices he had made long ago, about walking away instead of staying, about silence becoming easier than risk. She listened without judgment. "Sometimes," she said, "we think being alone will protect us, but it also keeps things from finding us." "Like what?" he asked. "Like understanding," she said, "or change." The word stayed with him. That evening clouds gathered again, but there was no storm, just shadows moving slowly across the land. They sat together near the window, watching the sky darken. "You will have to leave," he said gently. It was not a question. "Yes," she replied, "but not yet." He accepted that. He had learned not to demand answers before they were ready. That night she spoke of wounds that did not show, of carrying responsibility from a young age, of always being strong because weakness was not allowed. She did not cry. She did not need to. Her strength was clear in the way she spoke, steady and honest. He shared, too, about regret, about wishing he had spoken certain words when he had the chance, about learning too late that silence could also hurt. They did not try to fix each other. They did not offer promises. They simply sat with the truth. The next day, she walked farther than before. She stood on a small rise and looked out across the land. The rancher watched from a distance, letting her have that moment. When she returned, her expression had changed, not lighter but clearer. "I know what I must do," she said. He nodded. "When the time comes, I will help however I can." She looked at him, eyes steady. "You already have." That night the house felt full, not of noise but of presence. Two lives moving carefully around each other, shaped by loss, learning through quiet connection. They both knew the end of her stay was drawing closer. But they also knew that what had grown between them would not vanish with distance. Some bonds are not loud. Some truths do not need to be promised. And sometimes healing does not come from forgetting the past, but from being seen while carrying it. The last morning arrived quietly, almost gently, as if the land itself understood what the day would bring. The sky was clear, the air cool and fresh. The woman woke before the sun fully rose. She lay still for a long moment, listening to the soft sounds of the house, memorizing them. The creak of wood, the distant movement of animals, the steady calm that had held her together when she needed it most. She sat up slowly and placed her feet on the floor. Her body felt stronger now, not untouched by the past, but no longer ruled by it. She washed her face and looked at her reflection in the small mirror. The woman looking back at her was not the same one who had collapsed near the fence days ago. There was still tiredness in her eyes, but there was also clarity. Outside, the rancher was already awake. He moved through his morning routine with the same quiet care he always showed. But today, his thoughts were heavier. He knew this day would come. He had known it since the moment he carried her into his home. Still, knowing something is coming does not make it easier when it arrives. They shared breakfast together, simple and warm. Neither of them spoke much. Words felt less important now. Everything that needed to be understood had already been said or felt. After they finished, she folded her hands and looked at him. "I will leave today," she said. He nodded. "I thought you might." "There are things waiting for me," she continued. "Responsibilities I cannot ignore." "I understand," he said, and he did. She stood and walked outside, taking one last slow look at the land. She touched the fence near the place where he had found her. It felt solid under her hand. Real, proof that what happened was not a dream. "I did not plan to come here," she said quietly, "but I was meant to." He stood beside her, leaving space between them. "Some paths show up only when we're lost." She turned to him. "You did more than save my life," she said. "You gave me time, and time changes things." He looked away for a moment, then back. "You did the hard part," he said. "You chose to keep going." They walked back to the house together. He packed food and water for her journey. He offered a horse. She accepted with gratitude. When everything was ready, they stood facing each other, the moment stretching out between them. She took a breath. "I will not forget this place," she said. "Or you," he nodded. "You'll always be welcome here," she smiled, a soft, steady smile. Then she turned and mounted the horse. She paused once more, looking back at him. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too," he replied. She rode away slowly at first, then picked up speed as the land opened before her. The rancher watched until she became a small shape in the distance, then until she disappeared completely. The land felt different after she was gone. Not empty, just changed. Days passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm. The rancher worked the land, fed the animals, fixed what needed fixing. But there were moments, quiet ones, when he would stop and remember. The sound of her voice, the way she watched the horizon, the strength she carried without showing it. Far away, the woman continued her journey. The road ahead was not easy, but it was hers. She carried what she had learned with her. That being seen can heal. That kindness can exist without demand. That one night does not define a life, but it can change its direction. Sometimes at night she looked up at the stars and thought of the ranch. She did not feel sadness. She felt gratitude. And sometimes under that same sky, the rancher would pause in his work and look upward too. He did not wonder if he had done enough. He knew he had done what was right. Life moved forward for both of them. Separate paths, shared memory, and that was enough.